Hello, 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 and welcome to Up Dog Sports Talk. My name is Matt Miller. Joining me today is Justin McGovern. What's going on, dude?
Hey, what is up? I am excited for another edition here of our college football preview series. I think this is number 8 out of 9 now.
Yeah, so almost done. Who we talking about today?
Well, as my shirt and hat would indicate, we are moving to Conference USA. Congratulations, Matt, because you got to join for two of the most fun conferences to talk about. Um, This is a conference that just has a wonderful arrangement of random teams, but teams that we really like a lot. So we're very excited to talk about that.
So here at Up Dog Sports Talk, we love to represent the little guy. We showed that with the MAC. We're going to show it again with Conference USA. So Justin, why don't we just jump right in to Conference USA? So tier for those of you at home, we have broken each conference down into tiers. We have championship contenders, but I guess, tier maker didn't have enough characters for the line, so we have champion
No.
she
It's
contenders.
championship P contenders.
Yeah. So we have Western Kentucky, elite offense, Jacksonville State, who lost everybody, and Liberty, who seems to have lost almost nobody except for their quarterback. So Justin, what can you tell us about the Tier 1 team?
So I think in terms of when you look at this tier, maybe there's not a lot of surprises you see here. Liberty and Western Kentucky are I want they're the two favorites, and you kind of wonder if they're the two favorites by default because they're the most steady powers in this conference. But well, I will say I think it is valid. I think they both have a really good talent base around them, and we'll get to them in a moment. Probably the biggest surprise that people would see from this tier is seeing Jacksonville State still up here with everything they lost. But for one, they are the defending champs. We have to respect that. And two, I still think they could be really competitive in this conference with Charles Kelly, their head coach. It's very clear they liked what the culture was of the program. They liked that old school tough nosed nature that Rich Rod brought to the program. And Charles Kelly is a similar coach. So, at least culture wise, we're going to see this team be very similar. A team that's definitely going to work all 4 quarters and going to outwork the opposition. Now it's just all about what is the offense going to look like, because they pretty much ran at your face over and over again at a high tempo and would basically wear you down by the end of the game. That was their strategy last year. This year, they bring in Clint Trickett, who is more of an air raid guy. So are they going to be moving to more of a pass happy offense?
I think that would be pretty cool to watch, just stark differences. 37% returning production on offense. That's 120 or 114th in the country. Uh, Dead last in returning production on defense. So we don't know exactly what we're going to get from Jacksonville State. And I think that's the most fun part of the whole thing is they have the talent. They have an eager coach who brings a similar style in terms of like the tough, gritty coach that's gonna kind of get in your face and get you going. Um, but like they're a good program overall. So even if they lose people, the program is there to sustain itself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's about time we start. You would think the last year's breakthrough would kind of get them there, but it
So
definitely
Justin,
a good year would.
well, Justin is trying to, I guess, get his internet fixed because he's coming through terribly. Um, I guess I can move on temporarily to Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky had a really good offense last year. Defense was pretty good, but they weren't exactly the best. They have 34% overall returning production. not great. There goes Justin. Bye, Justin. We'll see in a little bit. But when you look at Western Kentucky and Jacksonville State, not a whole lot of returning production with it. When you look at Liberty, though, Liberty has 66% returning production, 72% defense returning production. So they have a lot of people returning. And I think Western Kentucky is up there just because they have had powerhouse offenses for the past handful of years, regardless of who they have at quarterback, at receiver. Um, Liberty, though, has a lot of returning players, and I think that Liberty is the favorite just because they have so many people coming back. Last year, uh, Liberty went 8-4, so they were a little bit of a disappointment. And Justin, thank you for joining us again. You kind of cut out there with Jacksonville State, so I was kind of left hanging on my own. I had briefly mentioned that Western Kentucky had a low percentage return rate, but seems to always have a powerhouse offense, and that's why we have them in the championship tier. Seems like they've had a couple of generations of players that have kind of gone through that building to have like their offense putting up some points. And then I had moved on briefly to Liberty, but I can let you finish your original thought.
Yeah, let me dive into this Western Kentucky offense because I'll tell you what, they are going to be a powerhouse this year. I think they kind of saw at the end of last year things kind of fell apart offensively for the Hilltoppers a little bit, and I think they kind of felt like things are getting a little bit stale. So they brought in new offensive coordinator out of Abilene Christian, and with him comes the quarterback, Maverick McIver, who absolutely tore it up at the FCS level. I have told the story multiple times on this podcast about how he tore me apart one time in NCAA 14, and that's how I learned of him. And thought he was a creative player, but actually he was a real person. He is going to put up big numbers throughout this year. I mean, he could challenge for 5,000 passing yards. He's someone that I'm really excited to see. They've got some good receivers around him. The offense, if they can find any sort of run game to kind of stabilize things, because if they can't run the ball, that may be their one issue where you could see them lose and upset to someone else in this conference because they don't close out a game properly. Um, they can do a lot of good things. The defense is also a little bit their other question mark where there's just a lot of new parts that need to come together. So we'll see how that develops. Those will be the two keys to Western Kentucky hoping to contend for this conference. But I absolutely think them being in this tier is valid because of the pieces they have on offense.
Yeah,
So you dove into Liberty.
briefly, I had said that they had an insane amount of returning production. They were 15th in the country with 66%, 72% of their defense returning. So they have experience on this team returning. They were a bit of a disappointment last year. They were supposed to do great things. I was about to mention that they were on track early last year to make the college football playoff. But preseason, everybody was kind of talking about them sneaking in as a G5 team. And then they kind of fell off. They lost 4 games and didn't necessarily contend for the top spots in the conference, but looking for a bounce back year. I think Liberty is a favorite just because they have a lot of people returning.
Yeah, great coaching, lots of talent. So you know that you can rely on them to definitely be a factor in this conference. Last year, kind of went off the tracks a little bit. It was kind of strange because they managed to keep Caden Salter around, and then just like him and his receivers did not connect. And it really, I don't know, like it just kind of looked like he wasn't into it as much. Like you just didn't see the same look from him that you did back in 2023. So the offense was just simply out of sync all year, which is not good because this team runs a very complicated spread option scheme. So you've got to have everyone on the same page. That just never happened last year. So I'm looking forward to seeing that improve this year. Ethan Vasco comes over. If I remember correctly, I think Jamie Chadwell recruited him at Coastal Carolina. So I think there's going to be some familiarity there. I'm trying to remember if the lines crossed, but I think they did. And then you look at the rest of the offense, I think you'll look at some young receivers stepping up a little bit. Last year, they kind of had to learn on the fly with CJ Daniels leaving. And I think, we have a good look at the offense. Defense, it would have been nice to see Bush stick around, but he left in the spring portal for Cal. But they still got a lot of talent on this unit, especially up front, especially in the front seven, I should say. Secondary has still kind of been a bit of a work in progress last couple of years, but I think they'll be able to take a step forward in that direction. And Liberty is absolutely a team that you're going to have to look for in terms of the contention for this conference.
And if I'm not mistaken, Justin, I think they're the betting favorite.
Yeah, for sure. They are minus 120 favorites. So
Jeez.
they're you're not even getting like your entire investment back on that one. They are such heavy favorites.
Yeah, so we've talked about the elite programs of the conference. I think now it's a good time to move down to the surprise section, the next tier down, tier 2. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Penn State, UTEP, Sam Houston, and Louisiana Tech. Justin, what can you tell us about these teams?
Well, for one, this conference does not have a significant difference in talent, so it would not surprise me entirely to see any one of these teams take a jump forward and even win the conference. It very well could happen. I think maybe one of the more captivating ones might be Louisiana Tech, just because, like, if you were they in 2023, their offense was so good. Put up tons of stats. Definitely was, I think, at least like top 15 in the country. But their defense couldn't stop a nosebleed. Then last year, their defense picked it up, just turned it around completely, was extremely good, but then their offense couldn't score. And they just had trouble finishing games a lot of the times. Like they were never consistent enough. Like you take the NC State game, for example, where NC State or Louisiana Tech took a 17-6 lead on the Wolfpack at halftime, and they were on the verge of driving and making that lead even larger. And then their offense gives up a touchdown to NC State's defense, and all of a sudden that game turned. So you look at that kind of situation, it's like, man, if you could just combine the 2023 Louisiana Tech offense with the 2024 defense, you've got a powerhouse in this conference for sure. But that's their goal this year, is to try to merge those two. And you're looking at the offense. The offense still, the quarterback position is a little bit more in doubt than expected at this point, where a lot of teams are naming their starting quarterbacks. Louisiana Tech is not. Bullock is the returner from last year, but he is being challenged for that spot. The backup has more mobility. I think you're going to see a lot more quarterback run with Franklin in there as the offensive coordinator. So
Franklin.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that in the New Mexico State section. But yeah, I think you're going to see a lot more running game involved this year for the Bulldogs. That should help kind of, give them more consistency in offense and not really have those dramatic moments where you're turning the ball over and giving up momentum. So I'm excited to see that and see what comes of it. The defensive side of the ball, though, unfortunately, their defensive coordinator that came in and turned everything around is gone, and a few pieces are gone, but there's still a few key pieces back as well. And they're definitely going to look to continue to build upon the culture that they created on that side of the ball last year. So it'll be very interesting to see if they can keep that up. But this is definitely a team, if you could see those two, you don't see a lot of regression on defense. You see the offense really pick up, then you could be looking at them being the top team in this conference for sure. Now, that's a bigger question than the answer there because, of course, like I said, quarterback battle is still ongoing. The saying, if you have two quarterbacks, you have none.
Yeah, I mean, do you think they could be just playing this to confuse their week one opponent?
It is entirely. I mean, it's always possible. Everyone in FPS these days likes to play a little bit gamesmanship. Maybe trying to throw off their in-state FCS foe, the Southeastern Lions, from the game. And Southeastern is a decent FCS foe, so maybe you're trying to play with them. They got LSU in week two, so Louisiana Tech's really staying in-state. Which, if the College Football 26 trailer is correct, then Louisiana Tech's kicker will handle the crowd to kick a game-winning field goal to beat the Tigers.
One thing about this tier is UTEP has 75% returning production on offense. I think that's going to be key for them. I think that's the main reason why they're a surprise here. Like, they're 43rd overall with 61%, so they lost a little bit on defense, lost a small amount on offense, but they had a lot return still. And then Mid-10 State and I think it was Louisiana Tech.
Okay, you're back in Louisiana Tech, sorry.
Yeah, so those two kind of had average, like, around 50% returning production, so they lost about half their team. Sam Houston State lost almost their entire defense at like starters and backups, but they had like 60% return rate for offense. And Sam Houston has a really good offense too. So I think it's going to be like offensive shootouts with teams in this tier. It'll be fun to watch, but
yeah, it'll be very interesting for sure. UTEP obviously, UTEP has kind of got the more question marks on the offense. Yes, their production is returning, but their defense is definitely a lot more productive than their offense last year. But they got the former five-star Malachi Nelson in there, but that quarterback battle is still ongoing. So we'll see. I mean, if Nelson doesn't win that job, it's going to be kind of hard to see where his career goes. But Skylar Locklear played a lot last year. He's still battling there. Kenny Odom was a really good receiver as a freshman, so he'll continue to take another step. But the defense for sure will carry UTEP. And I just love the enthusiasm that their head coach, Scotty Walden, has brought to that program. The Miners are going to be a tough out in every game for sure. I believe I saw that their spread in the preseason, just like on some like metric-based guesses I saw, has them in 10 close games. So you want to watch competitive football, UTEP might be your team. Sam Houston's just going to be very interesting because they bring in Phil Longo, who is going to because their offense was just simply out there last year to protect the defense. It was all about the defense when Casey Healer was there. Now Phil Longo comes in, he's going to want to air it out. They're going to run a very up tempo offense. Receiver spread out wide, all that kind of stuff. They're going to flip completely. They're going to be an interesting offense to watch, but their defense is a huge question mark with their defensive coordinator and half their defensive players off to North Texas. Mid-10 State is an interesting one to me too because there's a lot of pieces to like of what they got back. The quarterback Nick Vadiato, very Italian last name there. I think he's Italian. I hope he is if he did that. But he's shown he's had a lot of arm talent, but he turns the ball over a little too much at this point. But it would really help if we got help from the offensive line. The offensive line was I'm trying to find a not mean word to say about it, but the offensive line really struggled for Mid-10 State last year. That's going to be the area they really need to step up if this offense is going to go. That will be their difference between contending or being closer to last year. Because I mean, if you look at last year, they went 3-9. They won all of their games by 9 points or less. and their losses were, I believe, all of them were by double digits. So it was a 3-9 record with a 2-0 record in one score games. They need to again. It's all about the offensive line for this team. That's going to be the key for the Blue Raiders.
Yeah, and Mid-10 State and UTEP really didn't do great last year. I'd say UTEP got a little bit more lucky in the conference by winning one more game. Um, but they were basically statistically the same team. I think now that there's some changing of the winds with both teams, I think we can kind of see them move up. But that's why we have them in the surprise category. Not a whole lot of teams in this conference compared to some others. So doesn't take a whole lot to just flip the script and move up to the top.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not a whole lot at all. And also, I guess we should also mention with UTEP, they were hit pretty hard by the injury bug last year. Staying healthy would be also critical for the Miners.
Well, I think we can move on to the less fortunate victims of our tier here. Uh, Florida International Pitbull Night, Vice Night at Pitbull Stadium. Um, New Mexico State Aggies and Kennesaw State. Kennesaw State, fairly new to the conference. New Mexico State rated the worst team in college football according to the video game. Um, and then Florida International pretty much just had the whole Pitbull thing kind of going for them last year. So, Justin, what can you tell us about this tier, and can any of these teams kind of turn it around?
Yeah, so the first one that kind of comes to mind here is maybe FIU. FIU, I was very close to putting in the previous tier that we just went over. They do have a lot to replace, but Willie Simmons comes in. He is a really good coach. If you aren't familiar with him, he was at Florida A&M and rose them to power in the SWAC. This included in 2021 or 2022 when the athletic department above him was not on the same page of him, and their team almost boycotted the game that year. And then, despite all that turmoil, he still led them to an extremely good season. Then, I know they have a SWAC championship in there. I believe they won a Celebration Bowl. Then last year, he went to be a running backs coach on Manny Diaz's staff at Duke. Now he comes to FIU. He's back in the area again. He knows how to recruit this area. He knows how to find hidden gems here. And already, he already seems to be stepping up the recruiting. But with the current roster they have Kwan Jenkins back at quarterback. That was a huge recruiting win because he considered hitting the portal at one point. And he's a guy who's ready to take a next step with this coaching staff. And they've got a pretty loaded group at running back as well. And overall, if you were to look at FIU last year, it was a team that got in their own way a lot. They lost a lot of one score games. So you look at that and you could see where this team could really turn it around, maybe more so than this searching for a bowl tier suggests.
Yeah, I think Florida International, they have a lot going for them. They have Pitbull owning the stadium. They're in Miami or near Miami, so they have the Vice Night thing going on. They have so much to do around the stadium. If they can just get going a little bit, I think this program can get a full head of steam. With the Miami Hurricanes being in the area and kind of recruiting all the good recruits, uh, FIU's left with kind of the leftovers. But it seems like some of the leftovers can be better than what Miami's getting.
Oh, and don't forget who won the last time FIU and Miami played each other.
Yeah. Um, but I mean, like FIU has a lot good for them. I think we are going to start seeing this team kind of turn around. Maybe not fully. Maybe they'll struggle another year or so. They don't have a whole lot of people returning, so it's tough to tell what they'll actually do. But they did pretty well in getting um, like their coach. So I think they can start building this thing from the ground up. New Mexico State though lost their entire staff and most of their roster to Vandy.
Oh,
That
they have the team that beat Alabama, by the way.
yeah. So Justin, what are we getting with this New Mexico State team?
Yeah, I think last year was just simply there were too many losses. There was just too much out the door, and last year was pretty much a lost year for the Aggies. Now you kind of look to rebuild a little bit. They needed to solidify the quarterback position. They brought in Logan Fife, who was at Montana last year. He's got a solid arm. He's a veteran quarterback who's really going to take care of the ball and at least operate the offense. Because last year, even finding completions was very difficult. And you've got decent receivers like PJ Johnson who can get it done if you could just get the ball to them. So I'm looking forward to that. Logan Five, I saw him play when I went to the Montana Missouri State game last year, and I came away pretty impressed with him. He's going to be pretty solid for them. The running backs, they got Callaway from Cal, took advantage of the mass Cal exodus that happened in the spring, where most of their offense hit the portal. So that was a nice little beneficiary there. Dejon Stanley from Utah as well. So you got some power conference talent there. The offensive line actually looks like it could be pretty solid. And if you take care of that, then the defense will look good. I've been seeing in camp so far, the offense has looked ugly, the defense is way ahead, but I think it was Stats of War mentioned that if you're in camp and you see the offense looking good, you have something to worry about. It's your defense you want to see look good in camp. And that's what we're seeing with the Aggies right now. Tyler Martinez at linebacker, he is a dog. He's going to be a guy who's going to be a game wrecker there at that position. Hobbs at corner is another star player. He's one of the better corners in the conference. So you've got some great pieces to build around. I really wish we had seen the D line kind of hold together a little bit better. Unfortunately, there are a few portal losses there. If it wasn't for that, like you were looking at a pretty complete defense for this team.
Yeah, I what I like about New Mexico State is I don't have the exact figure, but 2024 they lost. I would say their returning production is probably in the low 20s, wouldn't you say?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, absolutely.
they had almost nobody return. This year though, Justin, 21st overall in the country with 65% of their total roster returning, 69% nice on offense,
Nice.
61% on defense. So they get a large chunk of their team returning, and I think understanding year two in this system is going to play into their success if they make a bowl game, if they get close to a bowl game. So I think what New Mexico State has going for them is so many people returning that understand the system. And then they're bringing in these Power Five guys. New Mexico State could surprise quite a few people. Um, don't
Yeah, absolutely.
quite there yet, but um, I think it's a positive that they're getting so many people returning. Speaking of people
They're
returning,
they're they're kind of quiet this offseason too. Like there's not when everyone talks about a team that gets surprised in Conference USA, not a lot of people are mentioning the Aggies. And while I'm not sure if they have the upside to contend for a conference title, I definitely think they have a possibility where they could make a bowl game at least.
it
And of course,
they'll do enough to make you go, all right.
hey, at least they're solid again. And of course, this goes without mentioning. Earlier today we saw this will post tomorrow, but earlier today we saw Auburn just claim 7 national titles out of nowhere. And this is where I say in 1960, New Mexico State went 11-0, dominated everyone their path, and won the Border Conference. New Mexico State claim the national title. Do it.
Do it.
Claim it. Make it yours. Print the shirts. Do whatever you need to.
Yeah, get some gusto with the program. Um, Speaking of gusto, Justin, did you know that Kennesaw State had almost everybody return?
Yeah, it's really impressive, really, because obviously,
73% total.
Yeah.
Almost 3/4 of their entire team from last year.
Don't knock over your mic there. I get so excited.
Hey, nothing will beat that day that my microphone literally just completely came apart piece by piece. But Kennesaw State, 69% on offense, nice, for returning productions. 8% on defense. Now, statistically, they didn't do well on defense last year. They went 2-10. They were not a great program. I think a good note is they can build with that many people coming back. I think that's the thing that people will talk about Kennesaw State is that they're going to build to be better than the last 2 years.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's very interesting to me. I mean, it was impressive they managed to return this much considering the whole situation with the previous head coach, but they made a good hire in Jerry Mack. He was very impressive, especially at North Carolina Central, where he absolutely dominated the MEAC for a few years there. He comes in here and could really bring a lot of life to the offense right away. That was one of the biggest issues for Kennesaw State last year was they just simply could not move the ball in offense. Dexter Williams comes over after competing for the Georgia Southern job last year, but losing it. He comes over here. He is slated to be the starter. That has been announced. So I already like what he brings to the quarterback position. I think he'll be a very
Yes.
solid starter for them and a good starting point for this offense to really build a little bit.
And they're still new to FBS. They're only a few years in now.
Yeah, this is only year two, so
Yeah. So their expectations aren't high. I think exceeding expectations would just be exceeding last year, and honestly, that really wasn't that hard to do. So I like what they got going for them, but I think the main storyline, I think we're ready for it, Justin. The main storyline of this conference is that
oh
there's
yeah,
two new members,
let's go.
Missouri State and Delaware. I'm super excited for this. Always good to see new faces. Missouri State and Delaware, big programs in the FCS level last handful of years or so. But Missouri State returning a lot of players, but didn't do so well on their exit from FCS. So where do you see them going?
Yeah, I think they could be a little bit more competitive than one would think. It was a very and Missouri State is considered the last program potentially to jump to FBS for some time as they continue to work out the stuff with all of that. At our show, unlike power conference leaders, we like to see more teams move up to FBS. We like to see more teams and more storylines. But Missouri State may well be the last one. And they were a very interesting case. I think a lot of people found it a little bit controversial because they don't have a ton of history of success. They are often buried in the Missouri Valley Conference, which of course has all the Dakotas and other programs like Illinois State that are pretty good. But I think we start to see a real change. And it did start with Bobby Petrino, which is kind of funny. But they continued to improve, and last year was really their breakout point. They had a really good year. I did not know what to expect from them when I saw them in Missoula against Montana, and they battled that whole game. They fought hard and were close there until the end. And what I really learned about this team was, for one, they got a dog at quarterback. Jacob Clark is going to be really good. He's already one of the better quarterbacks in this conference instantly. And they have some other weapons too. Their receivers are guys who can make competitive catches. They're going to be pretty good. They got some versatile backs as well. So I think there's a lot of pieces to like about the offense. And really, even on the back end of the defense, they have some decent players. For the Bears, what their upside is going to be and what they can do in year one is going to come down to the trenches. That has been a long time challenge for them, and it's going to be a challenge for them this year. We don't know if they're going to be able to protect Clark long enough. Even in that game I was at last year, he made a lot of good throws while being pressured all the time. He took a lot of hits, and he's going to take a lot of hits this year, most likely. So that's kind of where.
I think they have the potential to not really compete with, let's say, the top three teams, but I think they can compete mid-pack if things kind of go their way. I think getting out from under the shadows of the Dakotas and not having to play the Montanas, like they literally most of their schedule was like every year was like the top programs in FCS. So getting out from under that and getting into more of a you this conference might put a team into the college football playoff, but that's a stretch. Um, I think that's going to be beneficial for them, and I think we can start seeing improvement. And I think they're better than the 53 overall that they got on college
Oh
football
man,
26. That was just brutal.
that is harsh. Yeah,
EA
it
knew better.
you hit a good point there though, because it is a program in a unique situation where like they have a large enrollment and everything like that, but for the most part, like their football program hadn't received a lot of support because there wasn't a lot of reason to be excited for it. There was, a lot more losing and stuff. Their basketball program actually carried the school for a long time. They had a lot of historical success in basketball, including, I think, a couple runs to the Sweet 16. But football wise, like, they needed something to jolt the program. And you make this jump, and now all of a sudden you're the only other team besides the Missouri Tigers in the state of Missouri here, in one of the biggest cities in Missouri, and you can really rally the community around that. I think there's a lot of new excitement around the program as a result of this move.
Yeah, and I mean, there's not much to write home about in the state of Missouri in the form of football. So, Missouri State, welcome to FBS. We'll see what you can do. Well, let's move on to the Delaware Blue Hens. Joe Flacco's alma mater. Justin went 6-2 last year. They face a bunch of Big East basketball schools in football. What can you tell? What can you tell us about Delaware?
I think they went 9-2, not 6-2.
Conference,
Um,
sorry, 6-2 in the
oh,
Big East
conference,
last year.
yeah, but yeah, overall Delaware had a pretty solid team. They had too many scholarship players to be ranked in any of the polls in FCS last year, but this is a team that actually comes up with a pretty good amount of depth. Now they need to figure out who the starting quarterback's going to be, and they also need to replace a guy who was definitely a candidate to be drafted in running back Marcus Yarns. But overall, like there's a lot of solid players on this team on both sides of the ball, really. Lots of depth that you wouldn't expect normally from an FCS move up. It's one of those teams that kind of reminds me of what we just saw with Jacksonville State and Sam Houston, where they were a consistent winning program at that level. Now they're ready to come up here and also be a consistent winning program. Now, obviously, the big question is, what are they going to look like in the trenches again? Because while they have guys who performed well at the FCS level, they are probably they're a little bit undersized in comparison to their competition now. But I'm thrilled to see this team. This team is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, they had one of the best offenses in Coastal Athletic Association last year and one of the best defense in the conference as well. Um, Turning an okay amount of players. I don't have those metrics pulled up because 65% overall, 54% on offense, and 76% on defense. A lot returning on defense. I think since they had a good defense last year, we can see a little bit of the same. You alluded to it. They lost a running back. They got to replace him. But things are looking up for Delaware. We'll just see how they can do at the FBS level. But Delaware, Blue Hens, welcome to FBS level. I think we just covered the Conference USA, Justin.
Time for our conference championship picks.
Yeah.
Matt, who do you see in the conference championship and who do you see winning?
I'm going to go a little off script here, Justin.
Oh, all right. All right. Please
I
share.
have Liberty against Sam Houston.
Ooh, interesting.
I think Liberty ends up winning it, but I think Sam Houston's offense is going to be a little bit of a powerhouse.
All right. All right. I like that. I like that pick. I'm gonna end up going more basic than you. I've got Western Kentucky versus Liberty, but I've got Western Kentucky winning it. Maverick McIver leads the Hilltoppers to a Conference USA championship.
I would say I would want Missouri State versus Delaware to win this conference, but um,
I don't
yeah,
know if they're eligible for the conference championship because
they're not.
they aren't full eligible, but it would be entertaining. Maybe in a few years.
You know what's funny about this conference? Most teams are in the top like 30 in returning production, or they're like bottom 15.
Yeah, not a lot in the middle.
No, like two or three teams in the middle, and everyone else is either a lot of people returning or no one returning. So, uh, I mean, Conference USA gets kind of swept aside most years. I think Liberty kind of holds this conference up a little bit. Um, so, like, we love covering Conference USA. We love covering MAC. I think they are uh, two conferences that people just don't pay attention to because they don't realize that just because they're not the best tier doesn't mean there's not good football to be had. Conference USA just doesn't have that midweek Maction style to kind of like everybody watches Tuesday night Maction. I feel like um, I don't hear a whole lot of people watching Conference USA. So if you're looking for something to do this year, check them out.
Yeah, October is when we start to see the weeknight Conference USA games. It definitely has been a boost for them. During those midweek games, we definitely have seen a lot more Conference USA talk than we had before because before they made the move to these weeknight games, Conference USA kind of shot themselves in the foot with a different TV deal where you had to go along all these random places to try to find their games, and no one knew where to find them. So the fact that they're back to being visible again is a huge plus. And I mean, like, I think Missouri State fans and Delaware fans are really excited to see their teams on linear TV. This is not a frequent occurrence for them. Actually, hardly ever, especially for Delaware, whose games are buried away in something called Flow Sports.
I think one of the things that Conference USA tried to do was be innovative and get out there and be like, hey, we're going to go to this network or this app. Just people didn't follow them. People didn't want to follow them. If they're not easily accessible, they're not relevant. But I think what Conference USA was trying to do was make themselves relevant by saying, hey, come to this app. It's football. So I like it. It's just we're not there yet when it comes to getting off linear TV. Nobody wants to go to
Well,
15 different places to watch football.
yeah, exactly. Like, if you're not on linear TV, you can't utilize the quad box. So, a lot of people that are watching Conference USA football, they're watching in the quad box. So you've got to be available.
Yeah. Any parting thoughts, Justin?
Well, we normally ask about a college football playoff if they can make it or not. I struggle to see the opportunity for any of the teams here this year.
Yeah, I don't think they're really in it. I think it's going to be a competitive conference, especially with like five or six teams. But I think overall they just don't have that top program in the conference that like Liberty last year was supposed to be that team, and they just kind of they had a solid year, but when your expectations are making it to the college football playoff and you don't, then it's kind of a bust.
Right. Yeah, and Liberty has the upside to do it. They have a decent schedule. They got their in-state opponents, James Madison and Old Dominion. You take down James Madison, and maybe we're having a different discussion. But for now, like it doesn't seem like the window's there at this point. But never know. If you start seeing one of these teams knock off a couple Power Five opponents, then we're definitely having a different conversation.
Yeah.
And I would
Well,
welcome that.
this is Conference USA football. Um, you can find us, Updog Sports Talk, on all social media, wherever you get your podcasts. Um, almost done finishing up NFL podcast portion. So once we're done with that, then the college football podcast portion will come through. So it'll be easier to find us on YouTube. But yeah, just look out for that. soon for college football videos making their way to Spotify and iHeartRadio and wherever you get your podcasts. So we'll go live in the fall, Wednesdays at 8, most Wednesdays at 8. And then, yeah, we'll catch you guys next time.